Hello, and welcome to Tales from a Sex Store. I'm Hazel, and I'm here with my co-host Billy McWilliams, and
Hello, hello.
a special guest, Cole, from the store.
Hello.
Yay.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Good
Morning.
morning. So today we are talking a little bit about the Pride event that happened in Bozeman and our booth at it, right?
We are, yeah. We have a couple things to talk about today. One of them is the Pride-A-Palooza and our booth at Pride-A-Palooza. And then Erotique also hosted a educational event called Queer Sex Toys with Erotique. So,
Awesome. And let's
Yeah.
see, you had mentioned that was in partnership with the Ojai Collective, right?
yeah, we hosted it at the Ojai Collective. Have you guys talked about them on the podcast yet?
We had Hannah on.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah. Hannah's uniquely fabulous.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're not fans at all. Everybody
No.
go to the Ojai Collective.
Yeah.
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 Well, how do you wanna start? What do you wanna start with?
So, yeah, we had a booth at, it's called Pride-A-Palooza or Pride in the Park. It's their resource fair that they do every year, and it's moved around a little bit. I think it used to be in that I'm blanking on the name of the park, but that little park that's by the Eagles.
It used to be Sir Optimus Park, which is
Right.
next to the Eagles, but I also believe it was on the Emerson lawn too.
It was on the Emerson lawn
Yeah,
one year
and
as
this is the
well.
second year I think it was in there, and I was excited to see so many different booths.
Yeah.
Like Ojai was next to us, and across the street was Ability by the ever charming Ricky.
Mhm. Ability Montana, yeah, was right across from us.
And did you know the path through the park was spearheaded by them?
I did not, but I
Mm, mm.
was happy to see that the park, I think, was a little bit more accessible
Well,
this
that
year.
is a direct work from Ricky.
Nice.
So,
Yeah, I know.
could
Yeah.
you maybe elaborate a little bit for those who don't know about Ricky and that organization?
So, Ricky is abled. That's why he calls it ability instead of disability, which I
Mhm.
love. Um, got a grant for $47,000 to create accessible trails in the park for events. So it's going to help with Pride, but it also is going to help with farmers market that's there, and on top of it, Sweet Pea. So and eventually the trails are going to expand throughout the Bozeman Park system,
That's
and that's
fantastic.
and Ricky's queer and just super fun, super positive.
That's awesome. Bozeman has an amazing trail system, so it's gonna be really nice to see that made accessible because it's so beautiful. It brings so much joy.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's just a small part of what Pride does
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, so we tabled at Pride again this year. This was personally my, second year tabling at Pride,
And you organized the whole thing too.
and I organized the whole thing, and one of the things that I wanted to try to do this year was it was interesting because Pride in the Park is a family-friendly and also kind of family-oriented event,
Sure.
but
And we're a sex
Erotique,
store.
we're a sex store and we're 18 plus. So one of the challenges that I had for myself this year was how do I represent a sex store at a family-friendly event? And I think it's a little bit different than I don't know if you've talked about, tabling at Catapalooza at all on the podcast yet.
A little bit.
Yeah,
A
and
little bit, yeah.
Essentially, with Capitalism, we're just giving out vibrators.
Yeah,
I mean, very few conversations. We give away a vibrator every 15 seconds for 5 hours.
yeah.
That's that is not Pride-A-Palooza.
Yeah, and, yeah, Pride-A-Palooza, I think, is a little bit different because it's or Pride in the Park because it's family-oriented and family-friendly.
Right. And this is more celebrating gay life.
Yeah, and I think that, Catapalooza, while it is technically family-friendly, you could bring your family there, it's more of an adult-oriented event because it's oriented to those people who are just entering
Right.
college.
right.
So, yeah, that was one of my interesting challenges for myself this year is how do I represent a sex store at a family-friendly event. And the solution that I came up with was kind of to focus on, we mostly had like stickers and keychains, and we had some mugs and magnets and fans. And that was kind of like our like product pool.
Right. Right.
The
And
novelty.
yeah, and then within those products, I tried to focus it on messages of, like, empowerment, whether that be, like, empowerment, like, within your relationships or within your body, obviously, like, queer, like, pride-oriented stuff,
Right.
and, yeah, tried to focus on more of that lens of, like, empowerment and education
Sure.
and
Body positivity,
body positivity,
healthy sexuality,
yeah,
celebrating queer.
yeah.
My favorite part was the bricks.
Yeah, the bricks were definitely a big hit this year. They came from a small maker called Empath Art,
Mhm.
and it was just a little, like, clay brick on a keychain. And for folks who don't know the significance of that, I think there's a little bit of, discourse in academic spaces on whether or not there was actually a brick or a first brick thrown at Stonewall.
At this point, it's myth and legend.
Yeah, but
And there's almost always some little part of it that's true.
yeah, so Stonewall, for folks who don't know, happened in June of 1969. Stonewall was a, sort of underground queer bar, gay bar, and in June
It
of
was actually mafia owned.
it was also yeah, it was owned by the mafia, and in June of 1969, it was raided by the police because you couldn't, have, gay bars at that time.
And the queer community was brutalized by the police for many, 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 many years.
Yes, yeah,
It was common and acceptable for physical violence against gay people.
yeah, and instead of, you know accepting that the police were raiding the place and leaving the people at Stonewall, fought back.
Right.
And it went I forget how long the riot went for, just off the top of my head, I should've.
But people fought back, and they threw a brick allegedly.
Yeah, they allegedly they threw a brick, and so that's kind of the significance of the brick within LGBTQ plus culture.
As soon as I mentioned the brick, Hazel was like, "Oh, yeah, now I get it."
Yeah,
Right. Yes.
yeah,
And I think that's brilliant. I just think it's a brilliant piece.
yeah.
We'll get more.
Yeah. Yes, getting more bricks.
You yeah. I'm putting one on.
Yeah.
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 Well, people will see it and they'll go, "Oh." And that's a great way of talking about resisting people who are hating against you.
Mhm.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's solidarity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought the brick was a fun thing to bring in even though it's not, it's I wouldn't say that it necessarily falls in, like, our, like, normal category of what we carry, but it fell within the category of pride and
for
in the
sure.
category of, like, resistance as well,
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
resilience.
and resilience. Yeah.
we're a safe space where people can express themselves, and this is an expression of their passion towards protecting their own community.
Well,
Mhm.
and it's a historical artifact, which is something that has been actively being erased. So
Right.
having having a physical memento of a historical event in a retail space is
Yeah.
it's really symbolic that anybody who came into the store who knew that, who knew their history and
Mhm.
saw that would know,
We stand with you.
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and when you see that, you'll go, "We stand with you too." And
Well,
it's like, yeah,
that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about, at least briefly, is Pride is a big time for what they call rainbow capitalism, right? So
Mhm.
all of these big corporations that spend a little bit of money to color code all of their products or some of their products,
gay washing.
they gay wash, right?
Mhm.
And so then they put out their products for 1 month a year, and then they spend the funds on that for the rest of the year backing politicians who are trying to abolish gay rights.
Mhm.
Right.
And so rainbow capitalism is something that we are very aware of as a store and try to
Mhm.
avoid. So, like, this is coming from a small maker, right?
Mhm.
We always support the LGBTQIA2S plus.
Well, and that includes the stickers that we have and other
Mhm.
merchandise that we have that
Right,
across the store, we're looking for things that are unique and interesting and show the values that we have of
right. Yeah, we
yeah,
don't really, like, maintain products by companies that support hate.
Yeah.
right.
That's something I tried to be very intentional about at Pride was like, we are a small business showing up to Pride, we're not a corporation, but
Right,
then also within the products that we carry, they're coming from other small makers, they're coming from queer makers, and, like, trying to really focus on LGBTQ plus owned brands and
right,
stuff like that, so
Ever so often, somebody comes into the store and they say, "Oh, I'm buying this a penis or something like that to give to my friend," and I ask, "Are you doing this to shame this person or to gay bait them, kind of thing, and
Mhm,
call them queer? Because if
mhm.
you are, I'm not going to sell it to you."
Mhm. I've had a little bit of that recently, especially as we've brought in more we've recently started carrying more stickers at the store for
Hmm.
sale, and I've had a little bit of that, especially with our, like, Kiss More Boys, usually it's I find that not exclusively, but a lot of times it's specifically trying to call one of their, like, male friends gay, who's not gay.
But in a pejorative sense,
Yes, in
yeah,
a yeah.
yeah, and it's really easy for men to shame other men.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we try to avoid that.
Yeah, and, I've had that sometimes recently with some of our stickers where they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna stick this on my friend's truck so people think he's gay," and I'm like, "No, you're not, because 'cause I'm not gonna sell it to you for that purpose, like,
right,
Right,
that's not why we sell this stuff."
right.
Yeah.
And there's a gentle way of doing it
Mhm.
without putting them down,
Mhm.
even though the behavior is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Because I think, for example, this last week, 4 men and 1 woman were walking by the store,
Mhm.
and the woman walks in, and then they shut the door behind her, so she's in the store alone, and they're all sitting there
Mhm.
outside laughing. And I was going that way anyway out the door, so she
Mhm.
left, and she was walking up, and I said behind him, I said, "Hey, that's 1 brave woman and 4 non-brave men."
Mhm.
And, of course, it was really awkward socially at the time,
Mhm.
but I got my blood up because, look, you can't make somebody feel bad like that because you're afraid to go into the store
Mhm.
or shame somebody for coming into a sex store.
Mhm.
But the art to that is try not to put the guys down. Try to elevate the person who's doing, say, something good. And I said to her, I'm like, "Good on you."
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And it like I said, it was awkward, and I left it pretty soon because clearly they didn't want to engage. But how do you do that, right?
Mhm.
Because I think it's really easy to shame heterosexual men.
Mhm. Yeah, and I try to approach it from a place where I'm not, like, shaming them, and a lot of times what I'll say is like, "That's not a very nice thing to do."
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
like, I even just yesterday, I had someone make some comments about someone who is, like, gender nonconforming,
Mhm.
and I'm not gonna repeat exactly what they said, but they said some, like, really mean things, and I just kinda looked at them and I said, "That wasn't a very nice thing to say." And I left it there,
Right.
and I think that they kinda realized and I think they realized beforehand too, because they said, "Oh, I probably shouldn't say this, but" and then, said what they were
That's a
gonna
good
say.
point. Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you probably shouldn't have said that. That wasn't a very nice thing to say."
Perfect. Yeah.
They, I think, kind of, like, recognized that after that.
In the '80s, when I first started managing the store,
Mhm.
Miss Kitty's, gay epithets were common,
Yeah.
and the pornography was very transphobic.
Mhm.
And you've seen the revolution where we get gay marriage, but it feels like we're backsliding. We're
Mhm.
going back to the old bigotry because that was acceptable back then,
Mhm.
and it's getting to be more acceptable. So, how do you find a way of making it unacceptable again?
Mhm.
And I think to do it with grace and kindness
Yeah. I think
works, not anger, because anger provokes other anger, and shame promotes more shame, which makes people act out.
yeah, I think a lot of people, feel very emboldened right now by the people in power to be more hateful and more shameful and, like, to, like, more outwardly,
Right. And how do we navigate that?
Yeah.
By holding events like Pride,
Yeah.
By holding events like
we
Pride.
make
That's right.
safe
Yeah.
spaces and we make them accessible, family friendly, and public.
Mhm.
Right. Right. Understanding that if you're good with somebody who's different than you can be the better person that you are.
Mhm. Yeah, and one thing I really want to kinda highlight is I really appreciated the trust that the Pride organizers had in Erotique because I reached out to them early
Right.
on when I was starting to, like, build some of the things that I was gonna put on the table this year, and I was upfront with them. I was like, "Hey, I really wanna represent Erotique as a business and what we do in a empowering and educational way," and they came back to us and just said, "We trust you to do that," and I said, "I'll run anything by you that I think could potentially be more controversial or maybe not appropriate for a family-friendly event," and I stayed kinda in communication with them about
Yeah.
what we were gonna
Well,
share.
it looked great,
Yeah,
and the stickers and other keychains and stuff we have were wonderful that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Another thing I wanted to talk about is all the booths at Pride were supposed to have some sort of interactive activity, and so what we've done for the last 2 years for our interactive activity is we've done a little queer affirmation board, and so I get a little poster board from Staples. I think it was like 15 by 18 poster board from Staples,
I
and
thought that was great. I didn't see many because I just got there early, but
yeah,
it's yeah. Hey, we should put that up on our poster outside.
that's where it is. Yeah.
Excellent,
That's where
excellent.
it is. Someone
Well, what
wrote that you were better than the donut guy on it. So
Oh, no.
Sacrilege,
yeah,
Oh my
sacrilege.
yeah,
gosh. Poor
Uh,
Robert.
yeah,
yeah, he's so put upon.
yeah.
For folks who don't know, my I have an identical twin brother who owns a donut store,
Which
and,
is nationally renowned.
yeah, and, we sponsor a softball team together.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent work for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
You 2 and your, like, sibling feud that you have is because you love each other so dearly, right? And it's
truly,
Mhm.
amazing, your
truly,
connection
yeah.
is just so
Oh,
beautiful and so
everybody
snarky
anybody who's
with each
listening
other.
in Bozeman, go to Granny's and he'll give you a free donut. If you say, "Billy says you get a free donut." Head on down.
You too.
You know the worst part? He won't.
Right, right, but he might send them back for a free vibrator,
But he
which
gets
Yeah,
we will give
annoyed.
away.
Yeah,
yeah.
and we had the vibrators at the event. Did you give any away?
We did. I don't know that very many vibrators got out because like, that was something that we had to navigate a little bit more
Oh, totally, totally,
carefully
that
with it being
yeah.
a family-friendly event.
Oh,
So
100%. I respect the effort you put in to make it safe and fun, and you know what? We are a sex store.
yeah, I don't think we ended up giving out that many vibrators that day just 'cause a lot of times I'd be about to be like, "Free vibrator."
And
Obviously, an adult who was at the booth, and then,
well,
like, a kid would walk up, and I'm like,
and you're like, "No."
"No."
Yeah, I
So
know. Well, part of it is the fear we have in the society where people don't wanna make a mistake, and I
mhm,
think it's legitimate to be very careful, so that's
mhm,
good. Yeah. So, yeah, you did a pretty good job at Pride. It's great to have that kind of relationship where they trust you and you do good
mhm.
things, and it's like, why does a sex store have to be not part of a community, right?
Yeah, I think that I would say that that's, like, one of our core values at Erotique is that we're, like, part of the
Right, we're part of the community and celebrate the community, and that's the entire community.
Mhm,
Yeah, and try to do it in a positive, fun, affirming way.
mhm,
Yeah.
Pride sounds like it was an amazing event, Cole, but you were telling us about this other event also, Queer Sex Toys with Erotique, hosted by the Ojai Collective for Pride. What happened there? Tell us more about that.
yeah, so we hosted an event at Ojai Collective. We're very thankful that we were able to
They're awesome.
use their community space to host an event. Our event was Queer Sex Toys with Erotique. It was affiliated with Bozeman Pride. It was part of the week of Bozeman Pride. And yeah, I had been kind of brainstorming an event like this for probably a little over a year. And I had spoken a few times to the manager, Natasha, and I was like, "Hey, Natasha, you do this, really great presentation every year for the Queer Straight Alliance, the QSA on campus. You do these great presentations for one of the human sexuality classes on campus. But those events are really like, they reach a student audience. And I think it'd be really cool for Erotique to do an event that can reach a wider audience." And so Bozeman Pride was looking for affiliate events, and I was like, "This is perfect. This is the perfect time to do it." And then Natasha came back to me and said, "Yeah, Cole, it is perfect. You can do it." And I'm like, "I can do it? What do you mean I can do it?"
And turns out you can.
Turns out I can.
You got
And
the idea,
so
you get the follow through. Run with that ball.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so I joined Natasha the most recent time that she did a presentation at one of the human sexuality classes just to remind myself of some of.
It's so fun for her to do it. I don't think people realize that traveling across Bozeman with 2 suitcases full of sex toys.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're heavy too. So
they're heavy, and, we were when I joined her on campus,
uh
we ran into the dean of students at MSU, and then at one point, one of the suitcases just started vibrating, and I was just like, "This is great,
I
we're
don't think
going to
we should.
speak to a class." Okay.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah,
yeah.
but well,
So,
vibrators.
yeah, we didn't turn the travel like, not all of them have a travel lock. Some toys do
Right.
have a travel lock, which is, a
But
really
when you have a case of sex toys, one of them's probably gonna go off. They're just so happy to be there.
yeah,
Pop
yeah.
quiz, which toy has a travel lock?
The Vito brand, I believe all of their toys have a travel lock.
And
I
this
Yeah.
can't
is
remember.
this is kind of a follow-up thing.
Yeah.
Someone had asked in the Q&A episodes that we just did,
Mm,
how well do we know our products, right? So, drop in a pop quiz.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Everybody who works in the shop knows the toys really well.
And
yeah.
also, like, so when you're in the class, describe what happens because all of a sudden this big, huge suitcase of sex toys opens up and gets passed around.
Yeah, yeah, so it's always really interesting because I actually my first experience with Erotique was at a presentation that Natasha did with the QSA, and they let us know a week ahead of time. They said, "Natasha's coming in from Erotique." And I was like, "What's
She's so good at
Erotique?" And
that.
they're like, "You're about to find out." Uh
Oh, no, they threw you into the deep end? They didn't
They
like
just threw me, like, straight into the deep end. I didn't know and they gave a little bit of information being like, "Oh, she's gonna talk about, like, a queer sex education."
She does it in such a great way because it's, like, so matter of fact,
Yeah,
detailed,
yeah, and
clear.
yeah, so I showed up to a presentation, and I was just like, "Yeah, she's gonna be talking about things." And then all of a sudden, there was 2 tables just filled with sex toys. I think
Yeah.
I'd probably only seen a sex toy, like, once in my life at this point, and so
Uh-huh.
being in front of, like, 2 tables just filled with sex toys, and then all of a sudden we're, like, passing them around, I'm like, "What's going on?"
and now you
Uh,
work there.
it was a
Information
very
overload. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely it was a lot to take in, and that was my introduction to Erotique.
It's a little
Uh-huh.
hard,
So
honestly.
yeah, it was interesting. I
I feel
think
like there should have been a
I
better
wish in
disclaimer.
hindsight they said, "Hey, we're gonna be passing around sex toys." So that's something that,
Yeah.
like, with this event, there was an FAQ section on our event page where I, in detail, explained, I was like, "We're gonna have, sex toys that you can touch, you can turn them on, you can feel the vibrations. If you don't want to, you can pass, and we'll just, like, pass things along to the next person." Um,
Right.
so that is something I tried to take into consideration with this event is people knowing exactly what they're walking
It's
into.
like the
Well,
donation plate at church, you just pass it along.
take a little, leave a little.
Yeah.
The nice thing, though, is that normalizing conversation about sex toys
Yeah.
because everybody has that thing in their head like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this," or, "Oh, there's something wrong with me because I like this."
Mhm.
and, "Oh, I wanna do that." Understanding that most people are sexually normal, and
Mhm.
those are
Mhm.
normal sexual desires, and expression is much better than repression.
Mhm.
Mhm, and that's one of the things I tried to talk about at the event was, like, you know, not everything that I've brought in today is gonna be for you, but everything I brought in today is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
I brought it in because it's a normal interest that people have, so
Right, right.
Right.
Well, and when I've been talking to people sometimes, I'm like, "Look, do you eat every single food in the supermarket?
Mhm,
No. Do you feel bad because you don't eat it? Just don't do it if you don't like it. That's
mhm.
okay.
Yeah,
But find the thing you do like."
yeah, yeah. Definitely, yeah, like, took some notes from my previous experience with the presentation and watching Natasha do this presentation at the human sexuality class, and then, yeah, orienting it more towards a, like, pride focus, so more like what she had done previously with the presentations for the QSA.
So what kinda toys are we talking about?
Honestly, it is toys from, like, all over the store. I did have a few toys that I brought in that were, like, specifically we have some toys that are designed for trans folks who have been on testosterone, whether that be, like, transmasculine or non-binary folks or however they identify. We do, like, have some specific toys that are, like, made for specific anatomy and, like, that bottom growth that someone gets, the enlarging of the clitoris that someone has when they're on testosterone. But other than that, like, there's not really many toys that are, you know, explicitly for queer people and queer
Penises,
relationships. Yeah.
prostates, G-spot, and clitoris are all pretty universal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I talk to people about sometimes when they come in and they'll see the anal wall and they'll be like, "Oh, this is your gay section." I'm like, "Well, everyone's got a butt, so
Right.
Yeah.
it's not the gay section because, you know, anyone can use it."
Billy said
P
something once that has stuck with me, which is that the ass is the great equalizer. Everybody's
Yeah.
got one, and if you don't have one, you know somebody who does.
Yeah.
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 And on top of it, it's like normal stimulation.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of nerves.
Mhm.
So many.
Yeah, so it was toys from all over the store, and one of the things that I kind of focused on was how can this toy be used with a variety of different bodies and in a variety of different relationships? And
Mhm.
so it wasn't so much the sex toys themselves that were queer, but maybe like
The uses were queer.
the uses were queer and how do you use if you have a penis and you don't wanna use a stroker because that feels dysphoric to you, what are some other products that you can use? How can you use a wand or a bullet vibrator on a penis instead of on a clitoris?
Right. Yeah, right under the head of the penis
Mhm,
is a real stimulation pot, which is analogous to the clitoris,
mhm,
just biologically. So under the head
yeah.
of the penis, very, very responsive to stimulation.
Yeah, developmentally in the womb, we all start the same and then our anatomy, like,
We're
develops
all
from there.
clitorises.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so
I'm gonna go as a clitoris for Halloween.
yeah, you should.
Right?
Right? I think it'd be great. Maybe
I
like a whole vulva, but with, like, my face would be the clitoris. I think
Mhm.
that's gotta be
I have a picture of me with 2 legs, the 2 giant legs, and
Uh-huh.
Yes!
I put my head on the top of it, and I said, "I'm a clitoris."
Mhm,
Perfect. Excellent.
mhm.
Oh my gosh, we gotta put that up on the blog.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Nice.
So what are some of the questions people ask?
Some of it was about, like, how, you know, it was kind of those questions about, like, I'm trans and I'm taking testosterone and I have bottom growth. Is there a air pulse toy that might work well for my anatomy? So that was one of the things that we talked about.
'Cause
Satisfier
all air postals aren't created equal.
yeah, air pulse toys are one of those toys, that can be a little bit, like, more anatomy dependent. So
Sure. So let's
depending
talk about what everybody talks about air pulse, right?
yeah.
Why are air pulse toys effective? What do they do?
Yeah, so air pulse toys, they have a little diaphragm in them. People aren't gonna be able to see my hands, but I'm talking with my hands anyways. They have a little diaphragm in them that moves, up and down, and so it brings more blood flow to whatever area you're using it on.
Typically clitoris or
Yeah,
parts.
typically the clitoris, but, you know, they do make G-spot ones that are designed for, like, internal use, but
And understanding too that you're right, those they do have some for the G spot. We don't sell a ton of those, though.
We don't sell a ton of those, no.
Yeah, now so the key to an air pulse toy is sealing it because
Yeah.
when you seal it, you get the air pressure, which gives you the flick. So it's suction
Mhm.
and flicking at the same time. Now, sometimes women, just say women with clitorises, say that they don't like it.
Mhm.
So it's like it's not for everybody. I would say a vibrator is a little bit more universal. However,
Mhm.
we've had some very, very good luck with that. But again, like you said, everyone has a different anatomy, and each air
Mhm.
pulse toy works a little differently.
Mhm. Yeah, so air pulse toys are definitely something I wouldn't necessarily say to someone that they couldn't get an air pulse toy for their first toy, but it is one that, like, I recommend that people have some more, like, familiarity with their own anatomy in order to, like, pick one out so that you know, "Is my anatomy a little larger? Do I need something that's, like, a little bit wider and a little bit deeper so that I don't get a tapping sensation instead of an air pulse sensation?"
Right, because sometimes that's too much. Sometimes it needs to be
Yeah.
deeper, right? And sometimes both the diaphragm and the other one. One of the toys we have, which I really like, the Love Inc. one,
Mhm.
is variable because sometimes you hear, "Oh, it's too much."
Mhm.
And those toys you can dial down, 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 down.
Mhm.
So you get the exact vision you want.
Yeah, yeah, one of the toys that I talked about to kinda answer this question, and obviously it's not universal where, like, everyone with bottom growth, this is the air pulse toy that will work for you, but one of the ones that we talked about was a couple of the options from Satisfyer, the Love Triangle and the Love Breeze.
Mhm.
The Love Breeze has a little bit of a wider opening, and then the Love Triangle has a little bit of a deeper opening. And there are also ones that don't start very intense because that's something that a lot of people, especially when they've just recently started testosterone, experiences like a lot more sensitivity than they're used to.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, that was
Well, clitoris and the penis have the same amount of neurons.
yeah,
Just tells you about the intensity of the clitoris.
yeah, yeah. Well, because it's so like concentrated to like one area.
I thought that with the recent study that it was 8,000 neurons in the glands of the penis and it was 10,000 neurons on the clitoris.
So more, right.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a really great diagram that was developed by, one of our coworkers.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we need to get that posted on our social media so people can see it. He did a really great job with taking he has a neuroscience background, and he did a really great job at, like, taking this study that was really complex and making the information, like, more digestible to a wider audience.
That's
Sure.
so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got great
Yep.
people at the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very varied for sure.
Mhm.
Smart and talented and passionate. I love that.
Yeah. I think another question that I got, which is actually like a pretty common question that I've heard asked at multiple of these presentations, is why are toys so expensive? And sometimes there's like an additional thing onto that, which is it true that I should be like getting a more expensive sex toy versus a less expensive sex toy? So one of the things that we talked about in the presentation was the materials of toys and their, like, porosity and how that affects their, like, body safety. But I do like to remind people we do have budget-friendly options at the store that are also body safe options.
Like the hard on.
Yes, the Hard-On is a great example, our toy.
So I want to come back to this really fast. You were talking about porosity and materials.
Yes.
And Billy and I talked about this a little bit in relation to toy cleaners,
Mhm.
but we never really specified when it comes to cleaning your toy, like the material and the porosity are kind of what allow you to get beyond a simple cleaning to sterilization and sanitization. And the things to keep in
Mhm.
mind there are for sanitization, you can use like an alcohol wipe, and that's pretty friendly to most higher end materials, but it can cause like discoloration or
Mhm.
a drying out of the toy if it's made out of like TPU or whatever material.
Mhm.
So if you're doing an alcohol wipe, you want to make sure that you also give it a rinse. But when it comes to silicones, glass, and metal, those can be sterilized, uh,
Mhm.
sanitized, or sterilized. So you can,
Mhm.
as long as it doesn't have electronics in it,
Mhm.
silicone, glass, and metal largely can be boiled.
Mhm.
Again, as long as no plastic is involved, as long as no electronics are involved for cleanliness, right?
Mhm.
So the material makeup beyond price is also a factor when it comes to cleaning.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, a couple things that I wanna add to that. One of the things I like to remind people is when we're talking about sterilization of toys, like, I think when people think of sterilization, they think of, like, medical settings.
Yeah,
So we're sterilizing toys to the best of our ability to the setting that we're in, but we're not gonna get it to the point of sterilization that, like, a medical office is gonna have when we talk
right,
about
right.
sterilization. Like, there's still germs in our environment. And the other thing I wanted to add is another thing that I talked about with body safety and sterilizing your toys versus sanitizing your toys that I thought was important to talk about at this event is if you're using toys with, like, multiple different partners,
Yes,
that also affects, like, you might wanna go with a silicone or a glass or a metal option that you can sterilize as opposed to a vinyl or TPE or, like, one of those options that is not as sterilizable and has some, like, porosity.
totally, exactly. Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
How was it received? How was the space?
I think that it was received very well. I do think that one thing that I forgot to do in the, like, getting everything set up, I had a way for people to ask anonymous questions ahead of time so that I could prepare a little bit more, but I didn't have a way to ask anonymous questions in the moment. I didn't have, like, a QR code I passed out or anything, so I think that if we do the event again in the future, I wanna make sure there's a way that people can ask anonymous questions, like, throughout the event, but I would say that overall it was well received and people seemed to, yeah, really enjoy it.
We had a few come in after the event,
Yeah.
spoke highly of it, and they were really interested in developing their relationship with
Mhm.
each other with toys
Mhm.
in a very, I thought, a really sweet way.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did. Yeah, I
yeah.
did see, a few of the folks who were at the event in the store later, which was nice to see because I was like, "Yes."
Uh-huh, it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you wanna demystify it, right? Because
Mhm.
people are so overwhelmed when they look at all that stuff.
Mhm.
And you know what? You feel insecure because you don't know everything,
Right.
Mhm.
and it's sexuality, so you don't necessarily wanna ask ask because you feel like you don't wanna let somebody know that you don't know, right?
Mhm.
Well, and if you don't have a lot of exposure to different types of toys like that, then one of the hangups about them is you might not even have a path towards envisioning how it could work for your body, right?
Mhm.
Right,
So, how the toy might be used other than what is presented on the package, how the toy might be used for your specific desires and needs. It takes a lot to think past the overwhelming quantity.
right,
I think that's something that we hear often in the stores. People are like, "There's so many options." And
Mm,
it's like,
right,
that's why we're here, is to help narrow down those options into something that'll work for you.
right. And also, if it doesn't work for you, come back. We're happy
Yeah.
to exchange. And
Yeah.
people are like, "You can't exchange a sex toy." I'm like, "Says who and why?"
Yeah.
This is like any other normal consumer item. If you spend good money on it, it better work. If it
Yeah.
doesn't work, we're happy to exchange because you want something that does work.
Yeah. I like to clarify for folks that when they do exchange their sex toys, that nothing ever gets, resold.
Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a shame-based world that, like, "Oh, you sell dirty sex toys." It's like, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's right.
It's like, hopefully, if you, return your items to, like, Ulta or something, they're not reselling, like, the lipstick that you just wore.
No, it's sexuality, so people naturally wanna put approbation on it.
Yeah.
Is there one toy that stands out that people were interested in?
I mean, I think one of the things that always stands out to people just because it's, like, such a unique shape when we do these presentations is, like, the Starcy or the Zeep from Cute Little Fuckers.
I knew you were gonna say that. I
Yeah,
knew it.
well, people just they love it. It's just, like, it's a little starfish, like, there's so many ways that you can use it.
So cute.
They recently also came out with the Mori, which is a little mushroom, which is so cute. They even gave it a little butt, which is just
Oh.
amazing. But yeah, that's one that I find in these presentations. I think partially because people look at it and they're like, "How do I use a vibrator that looks like a starfish?"
Oh, yeah, and that's actually a lot of times people look in the case and go, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Because it you know why? Because it stands out
Mhm.
and it's different.
Yeah.
I usually say that's good for edging because it can be different you can find different intensities at
Yeah.
different levels.
Yeah, each of the arms have a slightly different vibration intensity.
Yeah,
Right.
you're only limited by your imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Use it for
yeah,
what feels
yeah.
good, and that's the only thing that matters.
You could
Yeah.
be using it with a strap on too.
Yeah. One of the things that I said at the event was there's no rules when it comes to sex toys. The limit is your imagination, but please don't put a bullet vibrator up your butt.
Oh my gosh, for
Uh,
real. Flared base, people, flared base.
flared
Yeah,
base, long
yeah,
handle that you're not gonna, like, put all the way up
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So unless we're talking about anal play, there's no rules
yeah,
when it comes to sex toys.
and that comes directly down to hygiene.
Yeah,
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 And
yeah,
safety,
yeah,
and safety,
yeah.
for sure, but
Avoiding
yeah,
a really expensive ER bill.
right?
yeah, and it happens a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, never underestimate what somebody put up their butt,
Yeah, I
ever.
think podcast is a good opportunity to remind people. I order for the anal section of the store,
Yeah,
and I
and you're
do
good at it.
have small anal toys. So if you're thinking that you know, want something as small as a bullet vibrator, I have options that are as small as a bullet vibrator that are also safe to put in your butt.
Yes.
So,
Right,
yeah.
right,
I think sometimes people walk over to that section, and because the bigger toys take up more square footage, that's a lot of what people
yeah,
see, but
it
we do have small options in the anal section.
yeah,
Some of our biggest ones are awesome because they take up literal square footage.
Yeah.
They're just a delight to look at and be like, "The human body is amazing, and that is so freaking cool."
Mhm,
yeah. I also like the progressive anal toys.
mhm,
What mood are you in?
mhm.
So, progressive anal toys, what do you mean? Are you talking about the, like, gradated sizing packages or
Right, where you buy a package of 3 and one is a little bit more petite and one is a little bit larger. So
Right.
say you're starting to use toys and you wanna see whether you like it or not, this will let you grow as far as you want, or at least get started that way.
That is very true. I also appreciate that. It turns out the rectum is surprisingly
Adaptive.
adaptive. Yes, exactly. So you can start at a small toy, but a week later,
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
so the packages are pretty good, the progressive sets.
right. Did you bring up prostate toys?
We did talk about prostate toys. I actually, for this presentation, I lumped prostate and G-spot toys together because depending on a person's needs, or, like, desires in a toy, a lot of times they're interchangeable. So for someone, if they have a G-spot, they want a toy that's advertised in a more masculine way, a lot of times a prostate toy is a good option for them, and vice versa. If you have a prostate, but you're looking for something in more, like, feminine packaging, if you identify as maybe as, like, a trans femme person, a lot of times those G-spot toys are a great option. So I actually, like, lumped them together in how I talked about them, and part of that is also because the nerve endings that innervate the G-spot and the prostate also respond to similar types of sensation.
Right.
Pressure.
Pressure, yeah.
There's a specific I can't remember what it is at this point, but there was a specific dual model, and one came in black and was advertised for prostate, and one came in pink and it was advertised for G-spot, and it's the
Yeah.
exact same toy.
Yeah. That's the new Sensual, and I think they've actually changed the name, so they're both called the Ace now.
Nice.
But they used to be called, like, 2 different things,
Right.
but they've recently changed it, so they're now both just called the Ace, and you can get it in purple or you can get it in black.
Right
Yeah.
on. Yeah, I thought that was really clever. It opened the discourse for people who weren't working at the store to be like, "Wait,
Mhm,
I just saw this over there," and be like, "Yes, and this is why."
mhm,
It's interesting, it's like the universal, pleasure. It's like the G spot and the P spot are analogous.
mhm.
Totally.
Let's talk about how inspiring Pride was this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that Pride went really well this year. I think Saturday had a really great turnout. I was really pleased with the turnout
I like
at
the
our event as well.
variety of it, and I think a lot of you see more
Yeah.
mainstream things coming in. It just feels like it's something on the cusp of growing and getting bigger
Yes.
and better. I think
Yeah.
people are coming out. to
Mhm.
support the community, straights, gays, friendlies, everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's really nice to see in the current, like, cultural and political climate to see people still where things can feel so negative, to see people still showing up and showing their support and seeing all the
They
local businesses that support Pride and all the people who really make Pride happen and make Pride what it is, and it couldn't happen without our
they
community.
did a great job. Yeah, we do sponsor them every year too. We give them
Mhm,
financial resources to do it because we believe how important it is.
mhm,
And it's great to see something growing
mhm.
and representing more of our community. It's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, Bozeman Pride was really this was the 4th year, I believe, of the current era of Bozeman Pride, and the first year, it was really just spearheaded by, like, one person, like, one local drag queen that I don't know if they would want me to directly name them on the podcast,
Kudos to them.
but yeah, kudos to them. They made Pride in Bozeman, like, what it is today, and it's grown so much over the last 4 years.
Historically, the pride used to go to every different city in
Yeah.
Montana. And so you would have a pride maybe every 5 years.
Mhm.
So now something that is annual and successful and growing because it's not just the resource fair, it's everything.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool affiliate events. I attended a couple of the classes that were happening that week, and those were really great as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's our time for today, y'all. This was really fun. It was great to catch up on Pride since I wasn't able
Yeah.
to be there. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, thank you.
It was another great Pride.
Wonderful.
Ah,
Excited to see it continuing to grow year after year.
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Authenticity and expression and
Love.
love.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been Tales from a Sex Store. I'm Hazel, here with my co host Billy McWilliams and special guest Cole from the shop. Happy orgasms
Happy
Orgasm.
orgasms
and mental
and
hugs.
hugs.